Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this cultural inquiry. Tonight we gather to honor our rich cultural and spiritual contributions of the Latino community to both the church and to American society. We will explore how faith and culture intersect, shaping the experience of the Latino community in the United States and beyond. We want to thank you for being here and look forward to a thoughtful discussion. I also especially want to thank Haciendo Caminos for helping to sponsor this. The Order of Malta, thank you, so many members here. The School of Theology, of course. We have several of our professors here. And of course, Catholic University of America. Also want to thank the Mexican Embassy is here present. Thank you for being here. And also, of course, I said the Order of Malta. Well, let us begin with Father Mullins giving the invocation.
En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo, y del Espíritu Santo. Loving and merciful God, you gather us together in this Advent season to await the birth of your Son in Bethlehem. He came into the world so that we might be citizens not of any country of this world, but ultimately of the kingdom of heaven. Our Lord would know a childhood in exile, but would prepare the way for us in the kingdom of heaven. May Jesus teach us in these Advent days and on this vigil of Our Lady of Guadalupe to grow in our faith in God, our knowledge of each other, our understanding of culture, and the hope of our true homeland in heaven. And we ask all this through Christ our Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
I would like to introduce our MC for tonight, which is going to be William Dethridge. He is one of our alum, an entrepreneur, a graduate from the School of Theology, undergrad and master's. So, William, let's get our discussion ready.
There we go. Thank you very much, Roxana. It's an honor to be here. As she mentioned, my name is Will Dethridge. I'm a graduate of the School of Theology and Religious Studies and the CEO of Catholics for Hire, a digital marketing startup. It's an honor to be here as a Latino entrepreneur. And now I will be welcoming up our first speaker, Dr. Aaron Dominguez, the Provost of the Catholic University of America. Yeah, perfect.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming here to Catholic University of America on this perfectly miserable evening. We're really happy to have you here. Welcome to the Embassy of Mexico, joining us here at the Catholic University of America. This is something that we do here at Catholic University. We host events like this. We discuss the things that are important to the United States and our church. If you walk right outside the doors, you'll see the sign that says, "Welcome to the Catholic University of America in service of church and nation." And that's our mission, and that's what we take seriously here at Catholic U. And tonight's discussion on, these larger issues of Hispanics and Latinos in the United States are very central to that mission right there on that sign, in service to the church and nation. So our church and nation is now becoming increasingly Hispanic as time progresses. Parts of it have always been predominantly Hispanic. We were just talking about this with my friend here from the embassy, that I come from a part of the United States where our Latino roots have been there since the beginning, and our indigenous roots since the beginning of human beings being here on this continent. So what we can do here at Catholic University that I'm very proud of is have these types of discussions about things that might be uncomfortable, things that are topical, things that might even, be politically divisive, and to do it with respect. Because we understand who we're sitting in the room with. Everybody here is made in the image and likeness of God, as children of God, no matter what your political stance is, no matter your heritage. That is your identity. That's your fundamental identity, and we see that in you. So we're able to have this type of, I think, discussion about these culturally sensitive issues, diversity, here at a university like this, which is what I think all universities should be doing. Not all of them are succeeding as well as we are now. So I'm really thankful to my students and my faculty and staff and the history of this university to be able to do these kinds of things today. And that's important for, I think, our country, our church, our nation, and for higher education, and that we're able to do it here together in love, and to explore these try to find the truth. That's what we're after. And I'm looking forward to this panel discussion tonight, and understanding better our Latino experience both here in the Catholic Church, which we're deeply embedded in as the Catholic University of America, the University of the U.S. Bishops in the United States, and broader society. So thank you, welcome, and I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
And if I could welcome Father Richard Mullins back up to the panel, that'll be fantastic. Thank you so much, Father. So the way this panel is going to work is I'll give a brief biography of each of the presenters and let them talk about their topic for today. And we're going to start with Maria Arena. She's a Peruvian-American author, literary director of the Library of Congress, and an expert on Latin American history. Maria is a passionate advocate for literature that celebrates Latino culture and its history. Marie, your work in literature and history has helped shed light on the Latino experience. Could you speak about how your background has shaped your view of the intersection between culture and faith?
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here on this nasty night. It's so nice to see friendly faces. My nephew is a graduate of this university, so I'm very glad to be here and see you all. As you said, I'm a Peruvian American. I was born in Lima, Peru, in 3 months of life. I went off to a little tiny village, a hacienda on the shores of the Pacific, just outside of Trujillo, and grew up in this idyllic setting where it was entirely Peruvian in the best sense. There was no urban flash. There were just simple people living in a simple place, and the humanity of it, I think, has always stuck with me. I had the privilege of coming to the United States with my parents. My father was Peruvian, my mother was American. They met during the war, 1945, in Boston, Massachusetts. At the time, the Department of State, the United States Department of State, was bringing young Latino men, young Latin American men, to fill the classrooms because the universities like this were emptied of men. They were all off to war. The women were off in the factories. And so the State Department brought my father, who was a very bright young student in Lima, and he went to MIT and did his graduate work at MIT. And in the process, because it was wartime, space was very valuable, and the cafeteria for both the New England Conservatory of Music, where my mother was studying, was the same cafeteria for the MIT students who were coming from Latin America, all over Latin America, and studying engineering and physics and all the things that you needed. And then those students went off, actually, to serve the war effort by working in General Electric factories that produced war machines. So that was my origin story. They met, and my father and mother fell in love, and my father brought her down to Lima, which is where we grew up until the moment when they decided to come to the United States to better our educations and to better my father's career. So I studied Russian literature in college. I studied linguistics after that. And I hadn't a clue what I was going to do until the moment that I was teaching at the University of Hong Kong, British University of Hong Kong, and someone handed me a book, gave me the assignment of putting together a book that was the result of a conference on linguistics. I loved putting together that book, and the books became my career. I came back to New York and got a job in publishing. Here's where the story of my work begins, because in publishing in New York Publishing, which is where all the books are published, nobody knew about Latinos. And whenever I raised my hand and said, why don't we publish Manuel Puig, an Argentine author, extraordinary author, why don't we publish, the people who are coming up in Latin America, they said Hispanics don't read. It's not a market. Phenomenal to be saying that, because at the same time, the population was burgeoning. And it was burgeoning in a very dramatic way. When we came up, it was in the 60s. By then, the Cuban population had grown, had boomed in Florida. The Puerto Ricans were coming up because the whole framework of Puerto Rico had changed, its work had changed. The Dominicans were coming up. So there was this tremendous wave that was going on at the same time in the 60s, the 70s. And in the 80s, when I was told that there was no Hispanic market, it was astonishing to me. Where the story really actually turns is when I was hired by the Washington Post to be the books editor of the Post. And it was there that the Post editors asked me on my first day at work, you speak Spanish, you were born where? In Lima, Peru? And so they said, well, do you think that you could help cover the amazing population that's coming into Washington, D.C.? They're coming into to work in the tomato fields in Delaware and Maryland, and they're coming to do work in the poultry factories, and they're coming, South Americans are coming up in great quantities. And I said, well, of course, my duty was to do books. But on the side, I began to cover Latino subjects, the Marielitos, the farm workers who came up from Monterrey and then went back to Monterrey, in whole neighborhoods coming up. And it was really then that I began to realize that we were so invisible. At that point, it was, we were about 35, 40 million people, Latinos in this country. Now we are 65 million. It's an astonishing growth, coupled by the fact that we are also, we have big families. We reproduce, we grow, the population is young. And so it was extraordinary to me that we didn't know, as Americans, we didn't know that Latinos have been forever, since before this country was founded. We were here. We fought in the Revolution, the American Revolution. We fought in the Civil War. We fought in every war that America has prosecuted. And this is not in the history books. And so I started with my own story, and then built to telling the history and a biography of Simon Bolivar, which I thought covered a lot of geography, 6 republics, and a lot of chronology, because his family was here from the very beginning. So it became my mission, and I felt my duty to write about this population and to educate the American public and to become less visible, less invisible than we have been. So that really has been the start and the purpose and the challenge of trying to get it all in. My latest book, Latino Land, which I see here in great quantities, thank you, it describes this very diverse, extraordinarily productive and contributing population to this country. And it is very much a part of the American story. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you so much, Marie. So the next question is going to be for Dr. Dominguez, and I'll actually say a couple words of introduction for you as well. As I mentioned before, he's the provost of the Catholic University of America with expertise in physics and higher education. Dr. Dominguez has long advocated for the importance of cultural understanding in academic and religious spaces. Dr. Dominguez, as a leader in higher education, how do you see cultural sensitivity impacting the future of academia, particularly in the context of Latino communities?
Yeah, thanks, Will. Well, so let me just start with the present. So I'm the first Latino, first Hispanic provost of the university in our 137 years. And as far as I know, I'm also the first Hispanic dean to have been appointed here at Catholic University of America. But I'm deeply American. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas on the 4th of July in 1969, the day that Americans launched the rocket to go to the moon, and baptized on the 20th, the day that Americans walked on the moon. So I'm like red, white, blue, and Catholic. You know, this is, but Latino. And that's the history of my family there in Texas. German immigrants on my father's side from Bohemia in the early 19th century. And my mom's side of the family from Mexico from the beginning, like the beginning of the country, before, the border crossed us, so to speak. But that's a very common experience in Texas. There's many families that look like mine. I didn't think it was unusual until I left and then went and pursued a career in academia, always wanting to be a scientist and pursuing that, those opportunities that opened up before me, because many people who came before me helped out by opening up these doors for me as a young man. There's a beautiful quote in the middle of your book from Julian Castro, the mayor of San Antonio. He says, "The American dream is not a sprint. The American dream is not a marathon. It's a relay race.
Right.
You hand it off to the next generation." That's the American. I love that quote. I don't know if he invented that or not, but it's a beautiful picture of, I think, the American dream. And for me, being in academia my whole career in particle physics, in science, that I have in my heart and who I am, and I always brought that with me everywhere I went, and now have come here to the Catholic University of America, where upon coming here, I grew up in the United States, always lifelong Catholic, and I knew what the church was. I knew the church in the United States. I know how she speaks. I know how she looks. That's been part of my lived life, and coming here to a predominantly white institution with a long, beautiful history, being a university that serves the immigrant church in the United States. That's been our history. Let me read you a quick litany of the presidents and rectors of Catholic University of America. So, Keene, Kennedy, O'Connell, Shahan, Ryan, Corrigan, McCormick, McEntert, McDonald, Walton, then Pellegrino. So first 91 years, all Irish, and then one Italian, and then back to the Irish again. So, Byron, Ellis, O'Connell, Garvey, and now Scotch-Irish Kilpatrick. So the reason it looks like that is because that was what the church, the poor immigrant Americans looked like here on the East Coast, and that was our task, is to serve the church and the nation, just like it says out there on the sign. So that's our job. So what should we be doing now? Well, the church is young and Hispanic, and that's our product is education, higher education. Those are our customers, so to speak. They're young, they're Latino, and they're predominantly in the southern part of the United States, but also around here. So our job should be to serve these these families. So coming here to Catholic U, we had, I think, around 8 or 9% of our undergraduate population was Latino when I came here 8 or 9 years ago, and we made a conscious effort to try to directly serve and recruit those families, those students. When I first mentioned it, the board and other members looked at me like I had 2 or 3 heads. Like, why would you? What do you mean? Like, well, then I explained the business model. Like, okay, those are our customers. That's where it's growing. Those are the young people in the United States. That's our job is to go and to educate those young people and to give them the same type of opportunities that the litany of families that I just read out came before. That's our job as a university, and we are a comprehensive, faithfully Catholic research university that has the sciences. We've got a great physics department. We've got a famous Brazilian astronomer. We do cutting edge research. We discovered the neutrino here at Catholic University of America. So it's a place of, it's a long-standing, deeply respected university in the United States, and its tradition as a university with the special charism to serve the church directly as her research university. So I come from the 1960s, which is kind of the leading edge, I think, of that people who have been given these types of opportunities. And for sure, I'm very grateful to have been given those types of unearned opportunities in the sense that I work hard. I'm very good at what I do. I don't have any imposter syndromes. I have gratitude in my heart for having been given these opportunities. And I know that that it was other people who gave that baton to me to carry forward, and my job is to do that and carry it forward. And as a provost, I have this great potential to impact the lives of thousands of families like this, to hand the baton, thousands of batons off to them. And that's really a beautiful prospect. That's going to outlast me. Nobody will remember my name in 200 years, but the country will be a different and hopefully better place because of that. So that's from my perspective, those are the beautiful things that are going on at a place like Catholic University of America. But if you read history, it's always filled with struggle. It's always filled with pain. It's filled with discrimination. And it's because of our broken nature, our fallen nature. And here at the Catholic University of America, we see a path towards our final heavenly home, but we've got a job here to do on earth. God's asking us to do something here for Him, and that's what we can do at the Catholic University of America. So we've been deeply influenced as an American institution, deeply influenced as a Catholic institution, and that's our patrimony that we will be handing off the baton to the United States going forward. And we have great young alumni like Will over here, and just a great student body. I hope you get a chance to meet some of our students. They're just wonderful young people, and that's what makes this a great place to work, because it's filled with people like that who are striving, but who are good in their hearts. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dominguez, and thank you for all the work that you do for the current students, and also engaging alumni like myself, who come from very similar background. My mother is from Mexico, and my dad's as American as it gets, right? So coming here at Catholic U and seeing leaders like you in the community, that's very inspiring for sure. Next question will be for Father Richard Mullins. Same deal, I'll read your biography here. So, Father is a faith leader known for his advocacy for cultural understanding within the church. Father Mullins has worked extensively with Latino communities, helping bridge cultural gaps within faith communities. Father, as a priest and cultural advocate, what are some of the challenges you've observed in the church as it navigates the intersection of faith and culture, especially concerning Latino communities?
Thank you, Will, for that question. So it's not always easy to make cultural adjustments, and we've seen that over the history of the U.S. And we've seen the different waves of migration and how people were welcomed or not welcomed. And I found myself face to face at that intersection when in 2003 I was named director of multicultural ministries in the Diocese of Arlington. Now, I think Virginia suburbs, and I'm born and raised in the Virginia suburbs, born in the USA of Cuban parts, and but being in the Diocese of Arlington, you would think, well, it's a very anodyne suburban experience. But in the 2000 census, it was discovered that the most ethnically diverse zip code in the U.S. was in Arlington, Virginia, and the most Hispanic. The greatest concentration of Hispanics in one place was in Herndon, Virginia. And Herndon, Virginia did not have a Spanish Mass. And so you'd think it would be a no-brainer to go to the priest there and say, oh, well, since demographically, and not me, it's the United States Census showing how heavy the percentage is of Hispanics in this area, would you host a Spanish Mass? And the response was no. And I was told, well, the parish council doesn't want it, and the people don't feel comfortable with it, and I don't see any Hispanics around here, and I'm like looking around like, oh, okay, bodega and Hispanic restaurants, Pollo Campero, thinking, So it took a lot to be able to convince the pastor to have a Spanish Mass, but I figured that that's kind of indicative of how things go, that first you have to have people be seen, and Hispanics are not always seen. We fade into the background. Hispanics could have a revolution and take over the U.S. because people wouldn't even notice the ones in the high visibility vests and with the clipboards and what have you. They just fade into the background, and the people cleaning and so forth, and they could just go in and take over the government. I don't know if I should be saying this on film. But it was amazing to me just that this whole demographic did not see this huge population in Herndon, Virginia, and how it was rapidly growing, and then to try and get the community to acknowledge first and to see and then to embrace and to welcome the community. And now, everything's fine, and there's a wonderful Spanish priest there who helps out. But it goes to show what a challenge it is just to have people be seen so that we can minister to them, so that we can take care of them, so that we can be the hands and the feet of Christ to them, and to make everyone feel part of this fabric. I heard a lot of pride here in the U.S., and the people that I've interacted with in the Diocese of Arlington and the Archdiocese of Washington, who come here from other countries, who come here from Latin America, who are Spanish speaking, are thrilled to be part of this cultural fabric and very happy to be a part of this. And in my Spanish Mass at St. Thomas Apostle on the 4th of July, not just because it's your birthday, but you'll see them all coming to church wearing red, white, and blue and American flags, and but it shows that they want to be a part of this. And so, let's welcome and accept and integrate and celebrate all of us, no matter where we're from, and to be able to enjoy each other and to grow and to try and lessen the tension, lessen the conflict, understand each other more. And I'm so grateful to see this wonderful book that's come out, Latino Land, by Marie, and I can't wait to read it.
Thank you so much, Father. So for this next portion of the panel, we're going to have another round of follow-up questions for each of the panelists, starting with Marie. Your work celebrates the beauty and complexity of Latin American culture and history. How do you see faith and spirituality reflected in Latino literature and culture?
Oh, it's such a long and beautiful story. I think the church, it's extraordinary how quickly the church really permeated this hemisphere. You know, within less than 100 years from 1492, when Christopher Columbus dropped his anchor in Hispaniola, there were churches and schools, Catholic schools, all the way from Mexico to Argentina within it by 1590. It's an extraordinary sort of incredible evangelical experiment because it worked. It worked. Why? Because the indigenous to whom the conquistadores came were deeply spiritual, deeply invested in faith. It's really interesting. Octavio Paz, the Mexican poet, said, I think the quote goes something like this: God exists, he needs to. There is in the Latin American spirit the sense that there is an inviolable bedrock of religion in us. Paraphrasing a little bit, but basically that's what he said. And I believe that completely. I think that there is a very strong sense with all the races that we represent, and I've done my DNA, I have every race of man in me, because my family was in this hemisphere, has been in this hemisphere for 500 years. And I think that when you look at the blend of who we are, the indigenous, the African infusion that happened, you know, when Africans were brought in the Atlantic slave trade, shackled and kidnapped and brought, there were 12 million of them that left Africa, that were dragged from Africa. 350,000 went to the United States. More than 11 million went to Latin America. We have a very big representation of African Americans. And so we have a combination of people of faith, the indigenous, the blacks, the Spanish, the Iberians in general. So this is an extraordinary kind of bedrock, as Octavio Paz put it. I remember speaking to Father Biosca, who is in the Church of the Corazón Sagrado, the Sacred Heart Church on 16th Street. And I said, Father Emilio, what do you think is going on with all of this sort of conversions from Catholics going to evangelical churches in this country, and or choosing no faith at all, which seems to be a larger issue and a larger challenge among Americans in general. And he said, well, it's a kind of psychotic condition because you are fighting the spirit that is in you, the soul that is in you, if you negate the faith that we all represent. And I thought that was such a beautiful sort of paraphrase of what Octavio Paz had said, and what I believe completely. The reason why the Catholic Church was so successful to build churches in that great expansive territory, and the schools, the institutions of educational institutions, was because it was a combination of people of faith, deeply, deeply of faith. And I think spirituality is even in the sort of combined religions that you find, for instance, in the Cubans, who still practice their Yoruba faith, but it's coupled with the Catholic faith. In my origin country, in Peru, you have in the Andes, you have people who combine the belief in Pachamama, nature, who combine it with Catholicism, and it's just more proof that that is just deep bedrock in us. we are people of faith.
Thank you so much. This next question is for Dr. Dominguez. We know that Latino culture has had an enduring impact on American society. From your perspective in higher education, how has the Latino experience influenced the American church's growth and evolution?
Well, I mentioned some of it, and I think that we're going through another era of change with many more Latinos going through higher ed, which is the business I'm in. Many more Latinos starting to get educated in the STEM workforce, which is pretty much a national need here in the United States, that we have a competitive, well-educated workforce in the STEM fields. But it looks different than it does with the other non-Hispanic students in higher ed, and here's how. So I serve on the National Science Board, which is the governing board for the National Science Foundation here in the United States, and in fact, one of my heroes that I met on the board who served with me is Ellen Ochoa. She's a Cuban, the child of Cuban immigrants, and the first, I think, pretty sure the first Latina astronaut.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was on the science board. She was the chair when I joined. We did a study of the STEM workforce in the United States, and what we found was that if you just look at the various types of demographics in the United States, and if we need to be competitive with our in the world as a nation, we need to take advantage of our educating our population, who we are in the United States, and you see that there are some real deficits in educating the various types of people living in the United States, various types of Americans, in particular Hispanics. Very, very few Hispanic PhDs, like just fractions of the actual representation of the people in the United States are getting degrees like mine. But a growing number now in the past few years are starting to get associate's degrees and 2-year degrees in these STEM degrees. More Hispanics are getting more degrees than their actual representation in the population. So people getting these 2-year degrees, which are very, very salient for getting a job, getting a promotion, getting into the workforce. So it's a very wise thing to do. It's a very inexpensive thing to do as well. I mean, in terms of higher ed, is to go after those 2-year degrees to begin with, and you can start stacking it. So we're starting to see now that's a growing, and that's the future, right? Those are going to be the future workforce here in the United States. So that's having, that will have a lasting impact, a positive lasting impact in the United States. Not everybody has to get a PhD in physics like I do. We need some so that they can go become professors and teach the students, but what we need is this kind of educated workforce, and we're starting to see it. So I'm happy that that's happening. I'm also happy that we have made a partnership. Catholic University of America deliberately made a partnership with a community college in Tucson, Arizona, in Pima County, Arizona, for doing this very type of thing in Arizona, which has no Catholic universities, in like the most Catholic state, the most Hispanic state, right? Where's the Catholic universities? The bishop asked us to go there, and this was our response, was to partner with a community college and offer a super affordable, faithfully Catholic education, partnering with a community college there to meet this type of national need and to project ourselves out there, because those families, they want an education, they want a better life, but very, very few of them are going to come to Washington, D.C., to our flagship campus here in the nation's capital. But again, our job on that sign is to serve the church and the nation. Well, then we better go to where they're at. So that's those are some signs of hope. It's gonna be a generation before I think we see the total fruits of it, but there's some real, I'd say, positive signs of hope there.
Thank you, Dr. Dominguez. Father Mullins, the Latino community's role in the church is vast. Can you share some insights into how Latino culture has shaped religious practices and experiences, especially in immigrant communities?
Sure. Well, we are on the eve of a great day, the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and tomorrow There will be all sorts of wonderful things going on in parishes that could never have imagined that they would be celebrating Our Lady of Guadalupe. And uh, if you all have cable television, you can turn on to one of the Spanish channels and watch the beautiful videos from Our Lady of Guadalupe and all the different singers that they have. But here in the U.S., we have an echo of that, and we have the celebrations of that, and we'll have mariachis in different parishes, and very soon we're going to have here in the Archdiocese of Washington, a large procession. They call it the Walk with Mary, but it goes from Sagrado Corazon Parish that Marie mentioned earlier here to the Basilica. But we see that sense of procession and that sense of cultural enrichment. We also see the dynamics of family life and the idea of family coming to the parish together, and the beauty of that. And we also see the different types of devotion, often called Latino popular Catholicism. So we have the quinceañeras, and we have the different ceremonies that surround sacramental life, and the different celebrations of Christmas and Easter. And in Holy Week, especially the Central American community come together and make carpets out of seeds in front of the churches. And all of that brings a liveliness that the new life in the church comes from the Latino community and that recent infusion. And just like each immigrant wave has contributed something to the life of the Catholic Church, so now it's the turn of the Latinos. And it's our job as the church to celebrate these cultural aspects and to encourage them, and to bring also a sense of education that people come to understand Our Lady of Guadalupe, who's not just patroness of Mexico, but also patroness of all the Americas, patroness of the sanctity of human life, and one of the most visited, if not the most visited chapel in the Basilica. And it's so beautiful to go there to see the chapel of Our Lady of Guadalupe and to see the number of people who come and bring flowers. We also see, there's also Cuban Madonna in there, Nuestra Señora de la Caridad del Cobre, who's also there in the Basilica. And communities, whether they're in exile for political reasons, for economic reasons, or find themselves here for work, they find a home in the church. And it's very important to find that commonality, that even though we sometimes have a different language or different cultural understandings, we're still one church, it's still one Eucharist, one Pope, one hope, one faith, one baptism, and to celebrate that and to unite it. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Father. And following up on some of your remarks here, this will open this up to the rest of the panel. What are some remarkable historical contributions of the Latino community to the church, or what are some ways that you think the Latino American community can influence the future of the church, whether it be in education, culturally? If any of you wants to follow up on that, I'll let you guys respond.
So I'll just mention that every 5 years they have the Encuentro, and it's an opportunity for Latino Catholics in the U.S. to come together and to dialogue about issues such as evangelization and outreach and being seen and being heard and being understood, and celebrating what we have, and coming together as a group and studying that and hoping that translates into action, into a sense of a culture of welcoming in the parish, and activities, Spanish masses, opportunities to do things in the Spanish language, and So I think that the encuentro is an important thing. There's also different groups. There's a Hispanic priest group, and I haven't been involved in it in a few years, but it was always wonderful to get together and to share our commonality of experience and heritage and our best practices in ministry, and to be able to learn how to reach out and how to handle different situations. Very often pastorally, when someone comes to you with one situation from the Hispanic community, there can be a whole Gordian knot of issues that then need to be addressed and worked on. And then how do we address those best, and how do we create an atmosphere where people can come to us so that we can help them with their situations.
You know, there is such a long history of education in the Catholic Church, and the schools that have raised up young Latino and Latinos and Latinas. It's extraordinary to me that that sense of moral, ethical, and spiritual education is just a part of life, of Latino life. You know, it's in the way that it is in the home, and that it is present in the schools. And I think that Latinos come out of those Catholic experiences with a sense of moral obligation to the rest of the population. I think it's very deeply ingrained. There was through history, you know, when you look at how when the United States virtually invaded Mexican land. I mean, there was the U.S. government basically at the time said, take your stake, go westward ho, and go out and plant your stick in the ground, and that's your land. Completely ignoring the fact that this was Mexican land, and went all the way from the Rio Grande all the way up to Colorado, and all the way from California to Kansas. This was all Mexican land, but when the Americans moved west and took over that land, of course, what they encountered at that point was this extraordinary Catholic population. And the Catholics who lived in that area, the Mexicans who lived in that area, actually suffered a lot of deprivation at the time, because they were herded out of the area. They were taken over essentially. And when the Catholic Church came down to set up in these formerly Mexican lands, they didn't allow Latinos to be priests. There were the Polish and the Irish basically and the Mexicans were made to sit in the back of the church. And little by little, there was this real and deep understanding that the Catholic faith was already there, and it was a very strong faith, and it was something that that actually informed the new American presence in that area. So, you know, when we talk about the contributions of Hispanics, it goes back. I mean, beside the fact that there were incredible scientists. I mean, we have Mario Molina, who was a Nobel Prize winner, who recognized the ozone layer. Yeah. And many scientists. The electron microscope that's in every one of your doctor's offices was invented by a Latino, and so many accomplishments that what we don't realize, or we don't factor into it, is this very deep education that we receive in our homes and in the world of Catholic schools. And I think that is something that can grow, and that can actually be, and you can invest in that, and you can draw from it. It has been a great enrichment, I think, realizing that this is a population that actually does receive the kind of civic and moral education that so many American schools lack.
I think that's right. I mean, I think there's a unique and deep connection between education and the Catholic Church that's still very strong in a place like this university, thanks be to God. And it's strong in other universities too, but it's in Catholic schools too, like Sacred Heart School here in DC, that there's something about our Catholic faith that's deeply connected to education and the formation of the whole person. So the spiritual formation, the human formation, the family cultural formation, and the intellectual formation is natural. It's a natural outgrowth of our faith in the Catholic Church. So it seems normal to us, but it's been lost in a lot of places. So I know that it's fragile. It can go away.
Well,
So
I remember that back in the beginning of the 20th century, when there was great discrimination against Catholics, enormous discrimination against Catholics, and it was tied in a way to discrimination against Irish people and Polish people and Latinos. And Notre Dame, my grandfather went to Notre Dame. And he came up from Peru to do it because it was the same thing. It was, Notre Dame was looking for Latin American students because it knew that that was deeply a part of the culture of the Latin American culture was the church and was the Catholic faith. And it's really striking to me that there are these waves of understanding among Americans that, this is a resource. This is the Latin American investment and deep sort of identification with the Catholic Church is something that can help the church here grow, actually.
And Marie, to your earlier point about, we've been here for a long time, and we've done a lot of good things. So while you were talking about, Professor Dominguez was talking about, scientists and so forth, it brought to mind the great servant of God, Felix Varela, who was a Cuban who sort of washed up on these shores, and he was sent to the Cortes in Spain to represent Cuba, and then ran afoul of the Spanish crown, had to escape to New York, and then became a priest in New York for many years. But he was a professor by training, a professor of theology, philosophy, and of science. And at the same time that John Henry Newman was writing his ideas of the idea of a university and ideas on human formation, Felix Varela was writing about the exact same thing in his letters to Elpidio. And so even though he lived in New York, he would write these letters to university students in Havana about human formation. And they were issues of philosophy and theology and virtue and so forth. So the Hispanic presence in academia in the New World has deep roots and roots that had been recognized by the church to the point that he is now a servant of God. He died in St. Augustine, Florida, and was later on taken. His remains were taken back to Havana, where they are now. But he's been honored. He was an American citizen, honored on a U.S. postage stamp, and his writings are still utilized and still quoted, and his cause is for canonization is still very much alive. So as we look to Cuban universities and their Latin American, Latino professors, certainly he shines out as an outstanding example.
Thank you all very much for your phenomenal remarks. Marie will offer some closing reflections, but before that, if we could have a round of applause for our panelists. So Marie, I'll turn things over to you, and then Roxana will come up to deliver further instructions for the rest of the evening.
Okay, thank you. It's the most remarkable thing that that comes to mind as I'm talking to you is the fact that we are, as much as our presence would suggest that we would be acknowledged as being a very important part of the American story, that we still are not. And there are lots of reasons for this invisibility. And the root of it is that we are very diverse as a population, the Latino population is very diverse in terms of our races, our politics. Certainly, we don't cohere as a political bloc, as we just learned very clearly in this election season. We have very strong differences between us. I mean, you can't, I've interviewed 237 people for the book, and you cannot persuade an Argentine that he has or she has anything in common with a Mexican until they're working together, you know. And there was a point in Simón Bolívar's mission to liberate the South America of Spain, that he said, you know, there are so many things that make us different, but there are two things that bring us together. One is our faith, and one is the Spanish language. So Cervantes' tongue and the incredible evangelical experiment that Spain did, Portugal did in this hemisphere. These are the things that bring us together. I'm struck by, in speaking of the invisibility, I'm struck by the fact that school children don't know that the first admiral of the United States was a Latino. His statue stands right in the middle of the city. It's David Farragut. He was actually Jaime Ferragut from the Balearic Islands. He was an extraordinary warrior, and he was the one who said, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." That was a Hispanic, that was a Latino. His father fought in the American Revolution and was a native of the Balearic Islands. Jaime Ferragut, David Farragut was not. And you see the Farragut Square, you go into the Army-Navy Club of the city, and you see a bust of Farragut sitting there. And people don't, there's nothing that says, this is a Latino. School children should know that. I mean, imagine the absence of this knowledge to children who might actually find some pride in this. George Washington said he could not have won the revolution without the Hispanic forces that came up. At the time, there was Bernardo Galvez, who was the governor of Louisiana and Florida, was sending troops and ships and ammunition to George Washington up the Mississippi River because the East Coast was blockaded. Why don't school children know this? You know, what incredible spiritual boost would that give someone to know that, you know, that this is a part of American history? There is so much that's part of American history that we're not taught. And that has really been my mission and my challenge in every book that I've written. And as I said, this is number 8. And it's important to me to point out that this is a contributing population, that this is a deeply faithful population. No matter what faith it chooses, it's very strongly there. And the church has made it so. It's the Catholic Church that has made it so. And I would challenge the church to bring this education to schools and to teach this extraordinary history that Latinos have made in this country. You name it, in whatever career. Science is particularly buried because we don't know to what extent Hispanics have contributed to the scientific progress in this country. It's so important for us to know that and for schools to know that. And so I would challenge this university to actually teach these things and to be and to raise up the Latino profile in this country as much as it can. I think we have contributed so much. I don't think people realize that we are the second largest Spanish-speaking nation, if you take us as a whole, in the world, second only to Mexico. We're larger than Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, you name it. The American Latinos are larger. We also represent almost $4 trillion. I mean, talk about the economy and business. It is the fifth, if you take us as a nation, it is the fifth largest GDP in the world. The fifth largest in the world. So, you know, these are things that we can ignore no longer. And if I can bring anything to this country, it is to wake up and see this population for what it is, from the spirituality that we've discussed here to the very clear economic contributions that this population makes and will make in the future. So that is my mission. I'll go on writing books about this. It is important for me that all of you, that all Americans are aware of this very, what shall I say, this population of possibility and what we can bring to the progress of this country. It's a machine for the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Marie. And if we could have one more round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.